Okay, so I want to spend the majority of this time answering those questions. So I'll be pretty brief. I'll be referring to this flyer, and those of you who are watching online, this will be emailed out to you from this evening or tomorrow morning. And so, as I already said, I work for the Los Angeles School District Human Resources. I'm responsible for the selection in Azusa Pacific schools that I work with. So we're really, really excited because this year the school district is anticipating hiring more than 2,000 teachers. That's a huge change for us, right? Over the past few years, we haven't been hiring as much, and that's starting to turn around. So that's really good for us. That get a lot of wonderful teachers like yourselves. It's also good for you guys to establish a market for you. So just want to talk about some of the reasons why you would want to teach in LA Unified. It is a huge district. It is the second largest in the country. And with that offers you a lot of options, right? There are schools all over the city of Los Angeles. Regardless of where you live, you have to fit geographically, and also make sure that it's a school that fits your needs and things that you enjoy. In addition, competitive salaries, right? That's a big deal. You spend money on your credential program, you need to make sure that you're going to be compensated. The salary schedule is on the back, and I'll talk about that a little more later on. And currently, our teachers is also in negotiations for a raise, so that is something that should be forthcoming in the coming year. Okay. Maybe even more important than the salary to some of you I know is our benefits package. We offer district-paid benefits for you and your dependents, meaning that there's no payroll deduction for any of it. It's all included, and that's worth upwards of $20,000 per year. So that's a really good thing. It's great. In addition, as such a large district, we're on the cutting edge of a lot of innovative practices in teaching, and that includes support for Common Core instruction, support if you want to become a national certified teacher, things of that nature. There are always professional developments and learning communities that are going on that we offer. Okay? And if you do become national board certified, there's an opportunity to earn up to 50% of your salary on top of salary. Okay? So, by the numbers, you can see that we have more than 1,200 schools, which you talked about offers a lot of variety, right? We have more than 60,000 employees, 26,000 of whom are teachers, more than 650,000 students, 90 languages spoken. If you take a look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see that there's a map of the district. Go online, you'll be able to see one that's a bit larger, and that just kind of shows how our district is broken up. It's broken up into 4 educational service centers, north, south, east, west, and we also have one called Intensive Support and Innovation. So that way you can apply to schools if you become eligible that are geographically easy to you. Okay? All right, so let's take a look on the back side. So this is an abbreviated salary schedule. All right, and if you're coming on board as a fully credentialed teacher, you'd be looking at that table on the top. Okay? This is abbreviated. There is a more full one that you can look at online at our HR website, which is www.teachinla.com. And essentially, it's based on years of full-time teaching experience and units that you have beyond your bachelor's degree. So as I said, your salary is based on years of full-time teaching experience and units beyond your bachelor's degree. So for all the credential work you've done, or for all the master's degree work you've done, you would be compensated for that. Okay? So I want to talk real quick about what are the requirements to apply for the district. What do you need in order to be eligible to go through our interview process? You need to hold a credential. Okay? You need to have a K-12 teaching credential, or if you're a school psychologist or in counseling, you hold the appropriate credential in that area. You need to be highly qualified for No Child Left Behind legislation. For most of you, that means you would have taken or passed a CSET. For some of you, that means you may have a subject matter waiver in the content area from the university. You need to have a CBES. You need to have your English learner authorization, which all of you will have included in your credential as you're going through it currently. And you would need to have your bachelor's degree showing that it's conferred on an official transcript. So, I want to talk about the interview process. What is our process? It's 3 parts. Okay, you come in for a regular sit-down interview. You also present a sample lesson, which is 12 minutes long. When you present your sample lesson, what we're looking for is a lesson that has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Not a 12-minute portion of an entire lesson, but an actual lesson that you could teach within 12 minutes. Okay, in your invitation to interview, you would also receive a link to our teaching and learning framework. It's the same framework that our teachers are evaluated on, and that's what we use to evaluate the sample lessons. So that way you would be able to look and see the things that we're looking for so you could be more prepared. It should be something you're comfortable teaching. It's your best lesson, right? Something that you're really excited about, maybe something that went well during student teaching. And then there's also a writing prompt, which would be emailed to you, and then when you come in for an interview, whether it be here or in our office, then at that time, you would just bring it to whoever was interviewing you. Okay? We also require a minimum of 3 references. This gets a little bit complex. Your references have to come from any employment that you've had within the last 3 years. So what that means is if you've had 10 jobs in the last 3 years, then you would bring 10 references. And they all get completed on our district forms that we would mail to you upon invitation. In addition to that, any student teaching experience that you've had, we would request a reference from your master teacher. If you've had fewer than 3 employers within the last 3 years, then we would ask for character references for people who have known you or your work for a minimum of 3 total references. Okay? And your recruiter would go over that during the interview, but I just want you to be aware of that so that way you can be a little bit ahead. Once that happens, your application is reviewed by a committee. If you're determined to be eligible, we place you on an eligibility list, which means you're able to apply for any vacancy in your credential area for 1 full year. And then we have in our district what's called mutual consent, which means that we want you to be happy and the principal to be happy, right? You're going to apply for the vacancies that you're interested in applying for, and then when you interface with that principal, they select you, then at that point you would be contracted and be brought on board. Okay, so both parties have to want to be working together. And that's a good thing, right? We want you to like your school, and obviously we want principals to be able to choose who they want to staff their schools. Okay, so those are the basics of what I have for you today. So I want to leave the rest of the time for any questions that you may have. Yeah, here and then.
That interview process was for teachers. What does it look like for counselors?
So for counselors, it's...
So I think I'm repeating the question.
Sure. Oh, yes. So the question was, I went over the interview process for teachers and what is it for counselors. And for school counselors, everything is the same, except there would be no sample lesson.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And we are currently now bringing counselors in. We just started hiring counselors again. So.
My question was the same except for school psychologists.
So her question was the same. What are the requirements for interviewing for school psychologists? And for that, anyone who is a school psychologist, I would ask that you email me after this so I can get your information to the appropriate person, because I believe you interview with the school psychology department first. And then if you interview with them, you would then come down to HR after that. Yes.
I'm currently in a contract as a school psych. If, let's say you go through the interview process, you're looking for specifically next year, right? Not if for school psych people are hired. It would be for the next, the 2015-2016 school year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the question was, for a school psychologist, if you applied, would that be for a vacancy for this year or next year? And so for school psychologists, my understanding is that we would be looking for the next school year.
We have a question from the regional center about what if you had the same job for 10 years?
So regarding references, so the question was, what if you've had the same job for 10 years? So if you had the same job for 10 years, we'd ask for a reference from that employer, and then we'd ask for 2 additional character references from someone who has known you or your work within the last 3 years. Yes, ma'am.
Are you hiring LPCC, or are you hiring anyone for the mental health piece? Maybe 114? No?
I think you're going to have to educate me a little bit on what that is. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So We have a specialist who works directly with school psychologists. So again, for specific questions like that, I would just ask that you email me so I can get you an accurate answer. Yes.
So there's another question about the interview process. If a lesson plan is needed on any content area or language arts or math only?
No, so if you can teach any lesson that you would like. We do require that you bring in a lesson plan, but there's no specific content area that you have to give it in. Yes?
Are you able to provide maybe sample questions that are asked during the interview process?
So the question was, can I provide sample questions that are asked during the interview process? And my response is, I can't give you the specific questions, but what I can tell you is that our questions are trying to get at what your experience is, and they're things that you're going to want to draw on your student teaching experience or intern experience. I think that when you are preparing for the interview, I would think about different situations that you've dealt with, and I would think about, successes and challenges that you've had, and try and be as specific as you can. And and really, I know that it sounds odd coming from the person that's doing the interviewing, right? But we really look at it as just a conversation about teaching. We just want to get to know more about your philosophy on teaching and what your experience has been. And please ask as many questions as you would like. I want you to leave feeling like you got your questions answered. And yes?
Is there a GPA necessary for the undergraduate that's required?
So the question was, is there a GPA requirement for undergraduate degrees? And so generally, we do prefer 3.0 or above. However, we consider GPAs that are lower for any candidate that is credentialed. So it would not disqualify you if you had one that's lower.
And then another question, to be able to show that you're able to speak language, is there an assessment that identifies that you're going to do how proficient you are as a bilingual? Is there an assessment that you have to take
For teachers?
For just in general to check proficiency?
For bilingual authorizations?
Yeah.
So the question was regarding bilingual authorizations. Is there an exam? And so generally what we use is if somebody has a bilingual authorization on their credential, that's what we would recognize. And there's also the different B-clad exams that you can take through the CTC. And just while you guys are thinking of your next question, if there's anyone here who is earning their credential now, like you're finished, first of all, congratulations, how exciting. And also, as a district that's so large, we have vacancies currently. So there is the opportunity if someone were to interview, let's say next week, and then become eligible, then you'd be able to start applying for positions that would be happening next semester. And there's also opportunities for substitute employment as well. So anyone who's looking to sub in the interim while you look for a full-time position, we do have that option available.
And that actually leads to the next question they asked, what are the requirements for subbing?
Yes, that's a great question. So if you are credentialed, obviously you qualify to substitute. If you are not credentialed at this time, then in order to substitute, you would need a bachelor's degree, the 2.7 GPA or higher, and proof of passage on the CBES on an official score report, and then just the reference requirement and an in-office interview. Yeah, let's go here and here.
What do you guys do for general induction or BITSA? Do you guys have a program, or do you guys go farm that out?
So the question was regarding BITSA. What do we do for BITSA, which obviously teachers with a preliminary credential need to clear it. We have an entire office that deals with those sorts of things, and so that when you go through new teacher orientation, they would explain to you all the different options that you have in order to clear your credential. But we do have BITSA support providers that some of our more veteran teachers are able to provide that. So, yes?
Along with this, does the district pay for BITSA? Because I hear that sometimes, or now some districts are no longer paying for it.
So the question was about does the district pay for BITSA? Pay for it in what capacity?
I hear that some districts now, to clear your credential, they're no longer offering BITSA. You have to go through a second?
Like another provider?
Uh-huh.
No, we provide that support.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then, answer, it says, for those of us in a program right now, are we eligible to be hired without having our intern requirements finished?
So the question was, are you able to be hired without having your intern requirements finished? We do bring on university interns in some specific high need areas. I would have to check specifically to see if we have an intern agreement with APU. I'm not certain of that. And in addition, the requirements would be the same, and you would need a university intern eligibility letter. So essentially what that means is you go to the credentials office here at APU, and if you are eligible, they would provide you with a letter that you could then give to us that would let us know that you're eligible to come on.
And how would you, because LU invites me,
Mm-hmm.
so how do we determine where they place you?
Is your question specific to school psychs?
I would, I guess.
So,
That question,
no, so I'll answer it in two ways.
regional wise, like how do you?
Yeah, so the question was, how are you placed in a district as big as LUSD? And I'm sorry to do this to you, but for school psychologists, I'm not sure. Again, I think that the interview process starts specifically with the school psychologist office. And then once they interview you, if you're selected, then you come down to human resources to see if you are eligible and meet all the minimum requirements. I do know that they try and accommodate people in terms of geographical location, because we want you to be in a place where you're going to be happy and feel supported and be healthy so you can perform your job well. And again, as far as teachers, you select what schools you want to apply for, right? So you would be able, and that applies to counselors as well.
Do you have any suggestions for a school counseling applicant? Anything outside of the teacher realm?
Yeah, the question was, do you have any advice for school counseling applicants? And what I would say is, yes. Once you know you're going to get your credential, email me so I can have your application reviewed. And again, the good thing about that is the earlier you go through the process, the better, because then you're on that eligibility list first, right? And the eligibility lasts for how long?
1 year.
1 year. So if you're eligible in February of 2015, that means you're able to apply for a position until 2016. And so it just gives you more flexibility in terms of applying for all those openings when they start to roll out in the spring. So, and again, if you, once we're done with this, when you email me, I'll make sure that your application is looked at.
So another question, where are school counselors found?
Yeah, the question is, where are school counselors found in our district? And I can't speak so much for elementary. I don't know how many counselors they would have on campus, but for secondary schools, it's based on the student population. So for some of our really small schools and our pilot schools, that could mean just one counselor for the entire school. And so, and for some of our larger comprehensive high schools, that could be 6 or 7 counselors. So it just depends on the size of the school.
For application.
3. No, not from the past 10 years. That was I'm sorry, that was a specific question. So references, you need references from any employment that you've had within the last 2 years. So that, I was just using that as an example. If you had 10 employers, then you would need all 10 references. And then CBEST credential. But for the credential, you could just go online to the CTC website and just take a screenshot when you look yourself up on the search. Yeah, that's all you have to do. And the transcripts do have to be official.
How do we apply? Do we email you directly, or do we go through Teach in LA?
Great question. How do you apply? Probably, like, if that's the only thing you remember from this session, that's the most important. So our HR website is teachinla.com. It's very easy to remember, teachinla.com. And when you go there, you'll see on our front page there will be a link that says Apply Now. You're going to click on that, and then at that point, it's self-directed. So you're going to want to complete as much of that as possible. And the minute you submit your application and you have completed it, then you get my card or you get the email that you've received from Nori online, and then you email me, let me know that you've completed it, and then at that time, I'll see that your application is reviewed. Yes, sir.
There's always been rumors on what subject areas are more favorable. Say, you see there's certain content areas or subject that are more available.
Yeah, the question was, are there certain subjects or credential areas that have more availability? So something I'm responsible for, if you're able to teach elementary school and do so in Mandarin, I'd love to speak to you. There are some subject areas where we have a higher need. We always need physics teachers. We always need, let's see, what else are we having trouble with this year? Anyone that has a bilingual authorization is always very desirable. However, this year we're hiring in virtually every content area. So, what's your credential?
I'm social science.
Social science. So in the past, right, we haven't really hired a lot of social studies teachers, but even at this time, we currently have some vacant positions. So the question was, would a criminal record preclude you from being hired in the district? And so that isn't something that we're able to consider as recruiters. And so, but obviously everybody goes through a full background check and gets fingerprinted. And at that time, the appropriate people make those decisions, but it does not automatically disqualify you. Yes?
What about the rumor, where, you know, for instance, like myself, February, I have a credential, but obviously I never had it. There's that rumor of coming to experience having master, likely to get hired. What's the truth on that?
Because you cost too much?
Yeah.
So the question was, are you less desirable as a new teacher if you have your master's because of the amount that you would be getting paid? And no, that's not true for us, not for our district at all. That's not the way that positions are generally budgeted. And so, you know, principals make their hiring decisions based on, are you an effective teacher? Are you a good fit for the school? And we feel the same way as the Human Resources Division. We want to make sure that we're hiring the most excellent teachers for our kids, because that's what they need. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, do you bring a portfolio to your interview? And one is not required. However, if you'd like to bring one, you may do so. Again, the requirements are just transcripts, CBEST and CSET test scores, and then you would be sending in the references. And you have to bring in your lesson plan for what you were teaching that day. But I will say this, just as some advice to you all, I hope that all of you apply, and I hope that as many of you as possible will qualify. If you do qualify, I would say a portfolio is a great thing to take to principals. They have a very short amount of time, so when you're doing it, you're really marketing yourself. So how can you market yourself to a principal to say, I'm a good fit for your school, you want to hire me right now, on the spot, send in that intent to hire. So a portfolio would be a good thing to have in that regard.
What should be in it?
Which,
Just samples. Samples, lesson samples.
I mean, I can speak to personally what I've had in my portfolio, but I would just have, if there's any letters of recommendation that you've gotten from people that you think might be impressive, I would have some sample lesson plans, what you think your best lessons were. I would have any letters maybe from parents, like kids that you've worked with. I think it's a more personal decision, just anything that would highlight the achievements that you've had. Even if you haven't taught full-time, right? Just in student teaching, you've had a wealth of experience. So you're somewhere to start with that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, we have dual immersion programs. There's a significant Spanish, Korean, and the question was about dual language immersion programs. And those are growing, and we have a very large need for teachers who have a multiple subjects credential and a bilingual authorization in Mandarin, Korean, and Spanish. Yes. So the question was, what are the employment levels and how long do they last? And so as a university intern, you stay university intern until you become credentialed, and then if your principal would like you to continue in that position, you would become a probationary employee, which is what the majority of our employees come on as. Probationary employees last 2 years, and at that point, the principal determines whether or not, and this is all per ed code, a principal determines whether or not you will be retained, and if your principal endorses you, then you become a permanent employee of the district.
Probationary period,
Oh no, absolutely, you still have benefits, and you're on the same pay scale. It just has to do with due process and contractual rights. Yes.
Let's say, we're applying for specific openings. So if we apply to school already, or?
So this is a really good question. I think it's important for everyone to understand this because different districts work in different ways. The question was, if you are applying for a specific position on our website, then does that go through HR as well? So there are two separate processes, and they're scaffolded upon each other. So step one is meeting the pre-employment requirements with LAUSD as a district. So we're vetting you, and we're making sure that you meet our requirements. If, as human resources, as a district, if we approve you for employment, then only at that time are you able to go and explore the vacancies. Principals can't hire from off of our eligibility list, so you interview with the district first, and then once you're eligible, then at that time you interview with a different school. And she brought up EdJoin. Once you're eligible, you're going to go to the Teach in LA website, and there's a link where all of our vacancies are posted. You can look at it either in Excel or PDF, and you can filter it by content area. You can filter it by geographical region. So that way, in the spring, when there's hundreds and hundreds, you can see the ones that specifically are fitted to you.
The salary process. I was saying in the piece where you get hired. Also, what is starting?
Yes, so salary. I am not an expert, but I can tell you what I do know. Salary, again, if you are fully credentialed, if all you had was a bachelor's degree, like you had your credential upon graduation, the starting salary would be $45,637. However, I believe it goes in increments of 14 units. So for every 14 units you have, you would make a little bit more money beyond that step. And so if you look on the website, you'd be able to go down in terms of units. The maximum amount of years that you can rate in with is 10. So you can rate in with up to as much as 10 years of experience. But it's based on years that you've been teaching and how many units you have beyond your bachelor's, and there's a cap of 98 units. Yes, so if you're looking at the salary schedule online, you would be a C basis employee, which is based on teaching 180 school days. C basis, yeah. A and B basis are for administrators. No, the question is, are school psychologists considered administration? And school psychologists would be in the same bargaining unit as teachers. although I think there may be a different salary table for school psychologists, might be a little bit different. One of the things I want to say is that a big part of my job is making sure that your questions get answered. So if you go home and have another question, that's okay. Everyone here has my card. Everyone who's watching online will get an email from me within the week that has all of that information. I do have to say, don't take this the wrong way, but please do not call me, because I'm usually out doing something like this, or I'm interviewing folks. So please make sure that if you have a question, email me. That way I have a record of it, and I can get back to you in a timely manner. That's the best way to get in touch. And feel free to email any questions. Yes, sir.
If you could identify 3 to 5 major characteristics that hiring PLAOC are looking to come out from education.
That's a good question.
Thank you.
He asked 3 to. The question was, what are 3 to 5 characteristics that people who are doing hiring for the district look for? And so, obviously, I can't give you our selection process, but personally, I think it's important to come across that you really like kids. I don't think that gets talked about enough, but that should in any response that you give, that should come across, right? That you care for children, and that's why you're doing this. I think being very specific in answering questions about how and why you're effective. So if you're saying that you were successful, tell me why. I want to know what that looks like. And then just really marketing yourself. What makes you as a unique individual? Like, what do you bring to the table to a specific district or school site? You must have been a very good student. Anyone else have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
You're currently going to the doctorate, and they take that.
Yeah, the question was, does a doctorate get taken into consideration? And the answer is yes. There is a stipend, a yearly stipend for the doctorate. I'm not aware of how much it is because I don't have one, but on our salary table on the website, it indicates that. I can say that for those of you that have advanced degrees, you don't get as much bang for your buck for the actual degree, the stipend. It's not that much. Where you're getting it is for the units. That's really important. So like I know there have been a lot of questions about salary, but what's most important if teaching is a career for you, and this is common in many districts, but we really want you to work for hours. But the difference after 10 years between someone who has no units beyond the bachelor's and someone who has 98 units is $20,000. And that will only increase as we have the salary increases. So it's just really important that as you begin teaching that you continue to take classes in professional development units so that you can maximize your earning potential. Good question. And and another thing regarding salary is that there are many opportunities to earn extra money if that's something that you need to do, and some of us still have loans. And there are coaching positions. There's opportunities to tutor. Sometimes there's paid professional development. Depending on the budget and the need, there's summer school. So there's all these extra. If you're in secondary school, sometimes there are auxiliaries available where you teach an extra class. So those things are out there. We can't tell you specifically what they are because they're specific to that actual school site. Yeah.
Is unified there's loan forgiveness programs that do this if you have one school.
Correct.
And you work there for over years and the work. That's something that unified work with their.
So the question was about student loan forgiveness. And the first thing I'll say is that just recently, within the last 2 weeks, the header on our website at teachingla.com is a link that goes straight to all the student loan forgiveness programs that are out there. and what the requirements are, because they're very specific to content area, what type of school you're working in. Again, a lot of them require you to work at a Title I school, and the majority of our schools are Title I schools that receive that federal funding. And so it's purely informational. There's not really a counseling process that we go through with employees, but it's there for you to look at and explore.
We will do like, have to have the employer class or.
Yeah, and
the paperwork is provided.
And in my experience, that's from your principal. Absolutely.
Some people, well, for those people who are cleared for an interview, he will come back in February to interview, or those of you who apply and get cleared. So that will take place on our Azusa campus, so you would have to commute here if you're doing the live webcast. Also, just want to let you all know that in February, we will have some teacher professional development, and so I'm organizing that right now, and the dates for that are February 27th, which is a Friday, and then for those of you who are student teaching, we're mindful of that, and so on February 20th will be the same professional development on the Azusa campus. So the Friday one on the 27th will be our Anthem campus, and then Saturday in Azusa. And what that is will be teacher prep as far as getting you ready for interviews and resumes and looking at all the different areas that you could teach beyond traditional public schools. Also looking at setting yourself apart from the competition, your online presence. A lot of school districts are using their sub pool for hiring. So giving professional development on subbing and supporting you in that way. So please keep an eye out for that. And just thank you, Jacob, for coming out. And I hope this has been beneficial for you guys. And thanks.
And if I could add one, I'm sorry. If I could add one last thing, if Nori referenced us coming back here in February, and we'll be back. We always have that flexibility. But if there's anybody who is student teaching right now and wants to apply earlier, this is the time where in our office we're not quite as busy, and so if you'd like to come in and complete the whole process at that time, you can also do that. So if you email me saying you've completed the application, I will ask you that question. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.